When I first heard about Burnout during the middle of 2001, I was very excited right out of the gate. It was a game that promised to be much different than arcade racers of the past, and I've always been an arcade racing fan. Uh, Outrun from Sega in arcades helped me to conquer my fear of driving and my fear of taking corners in a car with its force feedback steering. Ridge Racer, geez, I've talked about Ridge Racer so much. In fact, I even opened a brand new copy of Ridge Racer in the last episode of Unsealed. I've loved this series from day one, and I've bought every Ridge Racer game with the exception of Unbounded since. Crazy Taxi, another Sega game that not only did I play a lot of in arcades, but when the home versions of it came out, first for the Dreamcast and then for the PS2 and GameCube, I was all over that as well. So arcade racing games, I've always been a fan. So when Burnout came out in 2001, published by Acclaim and developed by Criterion Games, I was all in. Drive dangerously is what it promises on the back here, or at least what the tagline is. This is no sit down simulator. No, this is definitely an arcade game. Burnout is a wild arcade racer with spectacular crashes that will leave you sweating, short of breath, and begging for more. Drive like a madman through everyday traffic, swerve into oncoming lanes, cut people off, and take loads of risks. Hyperventilating is part of the fun. And it tells you that the more reckless you drive, the more power you score. And it's true because as you play this game, as you come close to hitting other cars, or maybe when you're driving on the wrong side of the road, your boost meter goes up and you really want to have that turbo boost to compete in races. But you have to be careful because turbo makes you go a lot faster and it's a lot more difficult to quickly adjust or swerve out of the way if there's an oncoming car or if there's a turn that sends you into another lane. You have to be very careful of that. The best crashes ever in a video game, says IGN. And that was really the other big deal with Burnout, was that the car crashes in the game were unlike anything we'd ever seen, with flying glass and flying shrapnel. It looked really legit for 2001 and still looks pretty good today, although later Burnout games would look better, obviously, as the tech was better learned and as Criterion gave it more and more thought. But this is how it all started back in 2001, almost 20 years ago. And this game came out at a time in my life where I was struggling with some health issues, where I had to be home for an extended period of time. So I played this game a lot, and I really, really enjoyed it. And the game sold pretty well. Well enough, in fact, that Acclaim would release a sequel, Burnout 2 Point of Impact, for the PlayStation 2, also for the GameCube, and for the Xbox. This game expands on the original game by adding tutorials, adding new game modes, including the very popular Crash Junction mode, where you have cars either in a traffic pattern or maybe parked, and your whole idea isn't to win a race, but rather to cause as much monetary damage as possible by creating the largest chain reaction crash you can think of. And it's half puzzle, half action, but all fun, and it's something that you have to try if you haven't tried it yourself. This copy of the game I got back in 2011 when I was living in Arizona and I was starting to collect PS2 games legitimately. I'd like to get a better version of this down the line, but this game still works well, and the game's still pretty pricey, so I'm glad that I have this particular version of the game. IGN again is quoted on the back. Nastier, more painful, wincingly wild crashes, it says here. Some of the features are progressive scan TV support, which is a big deal back then. Learning to burn in offensive driving school, that's the tutorial I was talking about. Heart-stopping chases in police pursuit mode. We would see this happen in later games. 30 all-new levels with weather effects. And racing through traffic was never this much fun, according to PSM. This is a fantastic game. I do recommend, if you have a GameCube, getting that version, just because there are more crash junctions in that version. It's like a director's cut than the PS2 version. But if a PS2 is all you have, grab this game. Don't wait. Just go out and buy it. It has my biggest recommendation, at least until the third game would come out. And things really changed for the third game. Acclaim was out. EA was in, and I know it is trendy to jump on EA and talk about how bad a company they are. And a lot of the time, I can't argue with you. I've done a video about Madden 21 and how ripped off I feel this year. But Burnout 3 was done right. Uh, Criterion Games was given license to do pretty much what it wanted, adding a couple of new things along the way, and the things that it added made for the best game ever in the series. This is Burnout 3 Takedown right here. This is the version of the game, or the copy of the game, that I opened up brand new on Unsealed some time ago. Burnout 3 Takedown incorporates one big change over the last two games, and that's that you can take down or crash other racers in order to get an advantage. So if you're racing against five other cars and you happen to run one off the road or ram one into a pole, you can get credit for that by way of more turbo and more points. It is incredibly addictive. It's a lot of fun to play. And some of the newer modes in this game, like Road Rage, for example, where all you're doing is just taking down opponents rather than worrying about the clock or worrying about finishing first, is such a big deal and so addictive. And a lot of the other cool stuff from earlier Burnout games return, like Crash Junctions, for example. Plus, Burnout 3 Takedown, at least in my opinion, is the best technically running game of the Burnout games during the PS2, Xbox, GameCube era. Runs at a smooth 60 frames per second on the PS2, some great particle and spark effects. It is a lot of fun to play, whether you're playing on the PS2 or you're playing on the Xbox, where you can use custom soundtracks, which was a great thing back in the mid 2000s as well. Fantastic game, gets my highest recommendation. If you don't own it, grab it. No matter what system you have, whether it's PS2 or Xbox. GameCube fans, unfortunately, were out of luck. But this is definitely the game to play if you're only going to play one. But this is an Unsealed episode, you're probably asking. Where is the game you're going to open up? Well, I am glad you asked. And it's cool that I don't have a microphone stand in front of me, because now I can turn my head and I don't have to worry about the sound going away. This episode of Unsealed celebrates a game that is going to be turning 15 years old on the 13th of September, which, as of this taping, is about a half hour from now. It is called Burnout Revenge, also published by EA on September 13th, 2005 for the PlayStation 2 and for the Xbox, and a year later would be published in high definition for the Xbox 360. You can also play Burnout Revenge on your Xbox One by using backwards compatibility, and it looks and runs pretty good. My issue with this game, and it's really nitpicking because the differences between Burnout 3 and this game are fairly minimal. There are some track design differences. This game being called Burnout Revenge, it's a big deal to have rivalries against other racers and get revenge on them if they take you down. And some of the track designs also lend to that. Plus, there are new things like vertical takedowns where you can actually land on top of another car from a jump, and that's pretty cool. And the track designs are well done. There are some minor technical performance downgrades, like it's not always in 60 frames per second on the PS2, for example, especially during crash junctions. Some of the particle effects may look a little bit worse. The soundtrack is take it or leave it. Of course, I didn't really mind EA tracks too much, so I really don't mind the soundtrack in this game either. Of course, if you had an original Xbox, you could just import your own soundtrack, just like Burnout 3. Forgiveness is for losers. I love that tagline, and it's true. When you're playing a game all about revenge, you don't forgive the other person, you try and take them down. Rule the road by dominating your rivals and laying waste to rush hour traffic. Aggression is the key to progression. Safe drivers get left behind. Unleash the fury in all-new traffic attack mode. Every car is a potential weapon. We're going to talk about this in a second, so don't get confused. Shunt, crash, and slam on tracks designed for battling and takedowns. So there's that track design I was talking about. Take your revenge online with up to 6 players. So, of course, you could go online with the network adapter for the PlayStation 2, or just go online with your Xbox. Revolutionized crash mode explodes. Plus, if you have Madden 06, you would unlock the Madden Challenge van as kind of like DLC, but it was built into the game. So let's talk about one thing about this game before I open it up that is kind of a topic of controversy among Burnout players, and is the topic of traffic attack and traffic checking. In the earlier Burnout games, if you hit another car that wasn't a racer, it was a crash. Your car would crash, you would lose time. It would be unfortunate, but really cool to look at. But in Burnout Revenge, they introduced traffic checking where you could basically rear end a vehicle in front of you and send it careening into other cars, so it's almost like a little bit of a puzzle itself. Traffic attack is built around that, where the more cars that you traffic check, the more time gets added to the remaining clock, and it's pretty addictive. Some players didn't like this, some players did. I like it. I've always liked the traffic check modes, the traffic attack, and I really get into them when I play this particular game. So I think it's cool, but it was kind of a topic of controversy back then. And still, if you talk to hardcore Burnout fans, there's still a 50-50 split in terms of traffic checking today. This is a brand new copy of the game, of course. Why else would I have this on Unsealed? We're going to go ahead and we're going to open this up and take a look really briefly at what is on the inside. Got to get my scissors for this one. Again, it's nice that I don't have the microphone stand, so I can kind of move around without bumping into anything. So when we open this up, we open the case. Oh yeah. And it looks like this one might be a reprint, unfortunately. And the reason for that is because there's also an ad here for Burnout Legends for the PSP, which is a reasonable version of Burnout to take on the go. So kind of take that out of there. The PSP, I'd love to start collecting for the PSP, but I just have so many platforms already. It's really difficult, and I have over 3,000 games to account for. And you can see in the background on this, on the other side here, there's some boxes behind me. I'm packing, and I'm getting ready to move in 2 weeks. So collecting for anything else right now would be kind of difficult. Plus, of course, with what going on and with money being a bit tight, it's kind of difficult to do much collecting at all at the moment. So here is the instruction manual. It is very thin, as you can see. Paper thin would be not quite right, but it's in black and white. It lists the play controls, which are very similar to Burnout 3. So if you played that, you basically played this. Talking about your basics, takedowns, metal placings, what your boost bar is, saving and loading, and the different race events, including traffic attack, burning lap, road rage, returns, as well as eliminator. There's a preview for different stops on the map and your Grand Prix races, and crash events, which are basically crash junctions from the second game. The one thing that's interesting about this, I think, is instead of World Tour, which Burnout 3 used, this is all about going up in rank from 0 stars to 10 stars and earning as many stars in events as you can to unlock these different tiers. It's pretty addictive. I think I like the World Tour mode from Burnout 3 a little bit better, but that's just me. I can certainly do either or, and I enjoy both games pretty close to equal, although like I said, I tend to side a little bit more with Burnout 3 when I possibly can play it. But having this on my Xbox One, it runs like a dream on the Xbox One X and is a lot of fun to go back and play, even though the online stuff has been taken down for quite some time. So happy 15th anniversary to Burnout Revenge, another great game and one of the last great Burnout games. When you ask me about Burnout Paradise, I kind of stick up my nose and say nope, just because I enjoy your more closed track arcade racers as opposed to the open world arcade racers that are really easy to get lost in. I know that makes me a bit of a Burnout snob, but I really don't like that game too much. The other Burnout game that I'm not mentioning here because it came out after Revenge would be Burnout Dominator, which was not developed by Criterion, but was rather developed internally at EA and is kind of like a greatest hits pack, looking at the first 4 Burnout games and trying to implement that all into one. That's something that's worth looking at, although it doesn't run quite as well. I think if you're a Burnout fan and you want the core Burnout experience, you're really going to want to go with either of these, whether it's Burnout 3 or Burnout Revenge. So that's it for another episode of Unsealed. This is the second one this week. Of course, the first one being with the PlayStation's 25th anniversary. Got a couple of more of these to do before the move actually happens, and before long, you'll be seeing me in a new setup. Until the next time, my friends, take care of yourselves and each other, and we'll see you soon.